Attention darts fans, after searching high and low, to and fro, from coast to coast on Wine and Toast, the award for best hashtag in the game goes to Dynamite Darts Content, and your winner is the weekly Dartscast, baby. 3 words, Dynamite Darts Content. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to an episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as always, by the time you're listening to this, he will be the birthday boy. It is the Darts statistician, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
Oh, you remembered. I barely remembered that's coming up this week. There's so many more important things coming up this week that are on my mind. But we'll get to the ice hockey later. I'm doing just well. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing well here, thank you. Just about recovered from a pretty busy weekend. Friday, I made my long-awaited debut in an ADC event over here. And when we think of legendary debuts in darts, we think of Rob Cross at the World Championship, Co Stompe at the PDC World Cup of Darts, Luke Littler in the Premier League. We'll come on to that in a moment. But my debut at the competition in Swinton on Friday night won't be joining that list. But the most important thing is I did enjoy the darts. I just didn't play well. But I've got to give a shout out to one of our listeners who I met that night, Spencer Hall. He actually recognised me from my voice, which I think is a first for me anyway. So big thanks to Spencer for the support, for listening to the show. It was nice to meet him, and hope you enjoy the show this week because we've got lots to get to, and we're going to kick things off by going back to last Thursday night, a day before my ADC debut and the Premier League playoffs. And fair to say, the Luke Littler era has begun. The Nuke wins the Premier League on debut, his first major title, a 9-darter in the final as well. Just how good was that?
Well, you missed one of the most legendary debuts of all when you're going through that list, and that was Bark Walsh at 2016 Q School. He only went and topped the qualifying school order of merit after all 4 days. Okay, he didn't win a tour card outright, but that's because, he wanted to be number one. The only way to be number one is to play through all 4 days, and that's what the GOAT did. That's why he had a legendary debut at Q School. But to talk about some lesser mortals in the world, Luke Littler, what can we say at this point? How good was that? I don't think that's right. It's how great was that? He is truly special. He has answered our questions. He's learned how to lose quicker than almost anyone in history. Because, you look at the first 7 weeks of the Premier League, he didn't win any of those nights. He had a lot of good runs, but he didn't manage to win any of them. And that meant every single one of those nights, he was suffering a loss. And he was suffering some losses elsewhere. And then on the 8th night, he went out in the first match for only the second time. And for the first time all season, he found himself outside the top 4 when the night was done. He was down in 5th, behind Luke Humphries, behind Michael Van Guren, behind Nathan Aspinall, behind Michael Smith. And what does he do from then on out? He wins for the next 6 nights. He makes the final in one of the other 2. He ends up topping the table. He ends up finishing the Premier League campaign with the second highest average of anyone in the competition, a touch over 99. In the end, including playoffs night, he made it to 7 finals across 17 weeks. He averaged above his seasonal average in 6 of those 7 finals. He lifted his game all but once when push came to shove in the final. Another time he was below it, he averaged 88. But beyond that, every other one, he was above what he was doing across the Premier League as a whole. And he ends up topping the table at the end of the regular season, and he ends up on playoff night looking untouchable. 100 average in the semifinals against Michael Smith, and then 105.5 in the finals against Luke Humphries, including that 9-darter, including just an untouchable performance. I don't know what more to say. That at least that won't be stuff that we talk about later when we compare him to the other big winner this past week on the European tour, that was, and Josh Rock. But the Luke Littler era, as you said, has begun. And I really don't know what more to say. It wasn't just good. It was great. It wasn't just dominance. It was the work of a master of the craft. In that same breath already, of Phil Taylor or Michael Van Gerwen. He still has, obviously, a lot to do and a lot more titles to win to match their overall CVs and to cement himself as one of the legends. But he's already shown that he's in that same breath in terms of quality, in terms of talent, in terms of motivation and desire. And let's see what comes next, because we won't have to wait long to enjoy some more darts. There's no hanging tight here. It's all enjoying the darts with Luke Littler.
Yeah, it certainly is. It was incredible. And there's been some terms like generational talent, darting phenom, teenage sensational used to describe Luke Littler over the last 6 months. But if you were watching the action unfold at the O2 on Thursday night, really you just had to sit back and admire what he was doing for someone still so new to that top tier of the game, to go and beat the last 2 world champions, 2 players that have got so much more experience of those big stages. And the way he did it as well, it's not like he scraped over the finish line in a last leg decider or got lucky. He was a more than deserved winner on the night. And as Luke Humphries said in his interview on stage after the final, Luke Littler was a deserved Premier League champion this year. And as you say, he beats Michael Smith in the first semi-final, has that break before the final, comes back. It's a repeat of that world final from the start of the year against Luke Humphries, who got the better of him on that occasion. And 5-5, they go off stage for that short interval for a few minutes, and Luke Littler comes back, throws in the 9 darter straight out of the gate and wins 6 of the next 8 legs after that interval. And he averages 118 for that second session across those next 8 legs. It was a special performance, and one that you've got to say is going to be talked about for many years to come. We all knew Luke Littler would become a major champion at some point in his career. It's just when and not if. And to do it in the manner he has, the Premier League, I know for us, we've not really talked about it a lot on the show this year. And I know for some of our listeners, it's not the tournament that we look forward to the most each year. We prefer to watch tournaments like the Match Play, the UK Open, the World Championship. But you ask any player that's played in the Premier League and they'll tell you it is one of the hardest ones to win, because it's not just playing the games, it's being on the road for those 16 consecutive weeks. Then you go to the playoffs the week after and you've got to perform in front of those huge crowds week in, week out. You're up against the world's best players. So if you can win the Premier League, it's a massive achievement. And Luke Littler, he's done it on debut at the age of 17. So for him, whatever comes in his career after this, whatever he goes on to achieve, I think this night at the O2 is going to be one that we're always going to think back to, and we're going to go, wow, that was the real kickstart of one of the most successful careers that we've ever seen in the world of darts.
Now, for the runner-up, Luke Humphries, he's now appeared in 6 of the last 8 major finals. Not too shabby in its own right. But rankings aside, are the 2 Lukes the clear top 2 in the game right now?
Yeah, I think they are. And obviously the rankings aren't going to say that for both of them. Luke Humphries, he's that clear number 1 on the PDC order merit. Luke Littler, I think he's at number 25 at the moment, but that number is going to continue to get smaller and smaller over these next 18 months. But you put that to one side, I would put the 2 Lukes as the unofficial 1 and 2 at the moment. And what order you've got them in, that's up for debate, I guess. After the Premier League playoffs, you've got Luke Littler, who got to the world final, lost to Humphries, but he's avenged that defeat. He's topped the Premier League table. He's won the playoffs. He's beaten Humphries in that final. Do you put that more recent success ahead of the body of work that Luke Humphries has had over the last 7-8 months, winning 4 major titles, including the World Championships, getting to number 1, getting to 2 more major finals this year as well? It's an interesting question, and maybe it could have been our question of the week this week. But watching the playoffs last week, for me anyway, it felt like the 2 Lukes are the 2 players at the top of the pecking order right now. They both won their semi-finals 10-5 relatively comfortably in the end, and against 2 established names in Michael Smith and Michael Van Gerwen. And these 2 names, Michael Smith, up until 5 months ago, he was still the number 1 in the world. And Van Gerwen, we all know his pedigree over the last 12 or so years, don't we? But I don't want to say it's a changing of the guard as such, with Smith and Van Gerwen on the way out. Littler and Humphries have taken their spots, because I think Smith and Van Gerwen, they are going to come again. You would get long odds on them not picking up more major silverware, but they are the number 2 and number 3 in the rankings, and we know they can hit those world-class levels on the big occasions. But right now, I think there is that clear top 2 in the PDC, and it is Littler and Humphries. They are sitting at the top of the tree, and underneath those 2, would you have Van Gerwen, Smith, maybe Gary Anderson as your top 5? they missed out on the playoffs, but Rob Cross and Going Price, the stats suggest they are throwing a top 5-6 standard so far this year as well. And you're going to hear our chat with Josh Rock in a few minutes, but I thought it was interesting that he said, looking back at his win at the weekend on the Euro Tour, there wasn't a Luke Littler, there wasn't a Luke Humphries in the field, but he said he felt like if he beat Going Price in that quarterfinal, he would go on and win the whole thing. So that's from a player's point of view, how highly they rate Going Price's game at the moment. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a clear-cut thing where all the rest of those players sit. But yeah, one thing I can get on board with at the moment is that we have got Littler and Humphries as the top two. And if you're another player in the field, if you can knock off one of them or both of them in a tournament, then yeah, you're going to fancy your chances of walking away as the winner at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think this will be a running trend on tonight's show. I think this is a very straightforward answer, and the answer is yes. Sure, there are people who are playing very well right now, and you mentioned a few that I was going to talk about, but there's no one playing at the level of either Luke Humphries and Luke Littler other than Luke Humphries and Luke Littler. And you know, if you look at the Darts Oracle FDI power rankings right now they're 1 and 2. And it's not even close after them for number 3. In terms of the overall rankings, Luke Littler 1905, Luke Humphries 1904, just a point between them. You have to go down another 41 points to Gary Anderson in 3rd. By the time you're down to the player in 5th, in Rob Cross, you're 73 points behind Luke Littler, 72 behind Luke Humphries. It's a clear-cut 1 and 2, and it's the same if you switch over to the television rankings so far this year or not so far this year, but in terms of current format. And Luke Littler, again, number 1 there, 1955. Luke Humphries, number 2, 1947. And then it's over 50-point gap down to Gary Anderson, who's a point ahead of MVG for 3rd. And by the time you get down to 5th, in this case, Stephen Bunting, you're 81 points behind Luke Littler and 73 behind Luke Humphries. It's a huge gap from them to everyone else in terms of current form. And I think that's a fair representation. Beyond the fact that Humphries has now made 6 of the last 8 major finals, he's always a force in every tournament he's in. He very rarely puts in a bad match. When we've seen him on the Euro Tour this year, he's usually gone far. And Luke Littler, when we've seen him on the Euro Tour, half the time he's gone and lifted the title. Granted, we haven't seen him in every single Euro Tour. But these are the 2 best players in the world right now. And I don't think you can make a strong argument in it for anyone else. Gary Anderson, who's 3rd in those rankings, again, yes, he's won a Euro Tour this year. Yes, he's won a Players' Championship event, but we haven't seen him on television play at those same heights. Granted, we haven't seen him in the Premier League for a couple of years now, so we haven't had as many opportunities, especially early in the season. But when we have seen him, he's not been the player he's been on the floor, even in that Euro Tour success. And if you're going to say he's one of the 2 best players in the world, you're going to want him to be going on a deep run in some televised event. Maybe he'll do it in Blackpool. Maybe he'll do it later in the year when we have a slew of televised events back to back to back to back. But it hasn't happened yet. Michael Van Gerwen has not even won a ranking title this year. He won a World Series event earlier this year, but that's it. He hasn't won a ranking event in over a year now. Where is Michael Van Gerwen's game? And then you can make cases for people like Rob Cross, who's lifted a Euro Tour title this year and played a lot better than his Premier League results showed. Same for Gerwen Price, although absent the Euro Tour title. You can make a case as well for Stephen Bunting, who won the Masters. Even Michael Smith, off of that Players' Championship win a couple weeks ago, is getting back and moving in the right direction. And there's other people you can make an argument for around 3rd, 4th, or 5th. But you can't make an argument for anyone else being in the top 2, because in either order, it's Luke Littler and Luke Humphries, or Luke Humphries and Luke Littler. They're the 2 best players in the world right now, and it's at least a couple country miles before you find anyone else.
We're going to continue our look back at last week's darts with the Euro Tour. But before we do, let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. He is the winner of the Dutch Darts Championship at the weekend, the newest winner on the European Tour. Here's our chat with Josh Rock. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newest winner on the European Tour, Josh Rock. Thanks for the time again, Josh. How are you doing?
Not too bad, Alex. Thank you very much for having me.
Great to have you back on. There's only one place to start, and that is with Sunday night when you won the Dutch Darts Championship, your first title on the Euro Tour. You said on stage after you were speechless. You even threw in a Wayne Mardle "I can't speak" in there. Has it sunk in now what you achieved?
Oh yeah, 100%. Obviously, came home, the family threw me a wee surprise gathering, so it kind of sunk in then, but it was a really, really good film.
And we saw the emotions come out as soon as that winning double winning against Jonny Clayton in the final. So what does this title mean to you?
Well, it means a lot, obviously, because I've proved it on the stage. I got my titles on the stage, and I can just push on from that.
And I was chatting with your manager, Rab Bain, who helped set up this chat with you. He said it was a late flight back from Amsterdam on Monday. You said there you had a surprise party with your family and friends. How nice was that to come back after the weekend and the travelling and see everyone to celebrate it so soon?
No, it was a very nice feeling. Obviously, the wife went over the road to get it all organised, which I give her a lot of credit as well. So, obviously, home a wee bit late, but it was still nice going home a winner.
Well, we'll come back to the weekend later, but one more on it before we circle back a little bit. The title sponsor of the Euro Tour at the weekend, Elton Safety Shoes. We've seen the green jacket on the Austrian Euro Tour, but did the organisers throw in a free pair of shoes for you for winning the title?
No, well, no, I didn't get anything from it. Unless I get something, obviously, when go back in the PDC Tour again, but no, I didn't get anything apart from the Aldi Trophy.
Fair enough. Well, the last time we had you on the show, we were talking at Mission HQ in Bolton last summer, and we teased our listeners that something exciting was coming from you in Mission. It turned out it was your own limited edition darts. How cool was that to have them come out? Because not many players get that so early on in their career.
Yeah, it was a nice touch, obviously, especially obviously from every set they were getting £1, and it was £5,000 towards sensory kids, which I'm an ambassador of, so it was nice to help out the kids with autism and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. Part of the launch, every set of darts, I think £5 went to that Sensory Kids charity, which I know is very close to you back home in Northern Ireland. I believe you're presenting the cheque to them next week as well. So how pleased are you to be able to give something back like that?
Oh, 100%, obviously, because business for them's not been the way they wanted to be, obviously, because obviously school and whatnot, so it's nice to give them a nice amount like that to help them push on forward.
Great to see. And looking back on those last few months of 2023, you broke new ground at a first major quarter-final at the Grand Slam. Before that tournament, you hadn't won on TV since the Worlds. Did it feel that long, or with all the Euro tours you play on stage, did it not feel that way?
No, it didn't feel that way. When you play in the major stages, it's a lot different than the European tours, so I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the surroundings of it all. I don't know, but you can tell the difference between the two stages, between the European and the major.
Well, the run at the Grand Slam, it ended in a close defeat, 16-15 to James Wade. It was a thriller for us to watch, but how tough was that defeat for you, having had those match starts to make it to that final day in the semi-finals?
Yeah, obviously, I broke down a wee bit, obviously, because it did hurt me, because I think I missed 4 or 5 match starts I should have won. Maybe it took far too much time, but I was just trying to slow my heart rate down because my heart was really pumping out my chest, so I was just trying to compose myself. But obviously, these things happen, you just have to learn from them. Obviously, I learned from every defeat whenever I got beat, so it's always a learning curve.
Definitely, and after the Grand Slam, it was back to Minehead for the Players' Championship finals. You had a 112 average against Gabriel Clemens in the second round, somehow ending in defeat for that game. But how are you feeling going into the Worlds, having had that major quarter-final and putting a performance like that as well?
Yeah, well, obviously I didn't have a great World Championship last year. It was very disappointing for myself, but I got over it pretty quick because obviously I got the news that I'm going to be a dad again, so that was I kind of got rid of it out of my head. The World Championship compared to my first year when Jonny beat me, I kind of took it bad for a month or two, but that's always a learning curve.
Yeah, I was going to mention that great news off the hockey. We saw recently the video of the gender reveal for the new edition, throwing a dart at the balloon. Congratulations, a little girl on the way. How excited are you for the new arrival? Me and the family's buzzing for it. Another baby in the way, so I think that's just why I'm really happy to play darts again, because obviously I've something to look forward to in my life as well. So, well, just going back to the Worlds, as you said, it ended early for you, but your name was still coming up later in the tournament. We had the Luke Littler hype train in full force, but Gary Anderson mentioned your name. He said that the media hype around you had set you back 2 or 3 years. Did you agree with that? Has it affected you, or is it something you don't take much interest in?
Gary's probably right in part of it, because you're trying to prepare yourself for the biggest tournament in the world, and they're just shoving cameras in your face. so you can't really have 100% focus on yourself, and obviously your manager telling you stuff and all that when they're just shoving cameras in your faces. But that's just all part and parcel of being a professional dart player. I just think that's just going with it.
Do you feel like you're more used to it now? Obviously, you've been on the tour for a few years now. That hype from that first year has kind of died down a little bit. Do you feel like you can do your own thing now?
Oh yeah, 100%. Obviously, just focus on what I need to do. Obviously, now I've won my second title at PDC, my first on the stage. Obviously, I can push on from that now and win a major.
Well, let's get on to this year then. And you were back on the Premier League stage in your home venue in Belfast. You were being interviewed by Sky, and I know when we spoke about the first time round the year before how nerve-wracking that was, but it gave you that urge to want to be in the Premier League. Was it a little less nerve-wracking going up on that stage second time round, or did you still get that same buzz?
No, I was more relaxed this time going up on the stage, obviously, because I had it the front of the whole crowd the first year, but the second year I was more calm. But I still want to be in that Premier League stage playing in front of Belfast.
Well, let's get on to this past weekend then, and going into the weekend you'd had 2 quarterfinals on the Euro Tour, a final on the floor, but the weekend you kick things off with that 104 average against Dirk van Dijvenbode. You survive a match start against Cameron Menzies. You're into that final session on the Euro Tour again. How are you feeling going into that Sunday night, 3 games from the title?
Yeah, I felt very confident. I had it in my head if I beat Gezi, I was winning the tournament, and obviously I was right in the end, so it was. But I knew Gezi, in my opinion, was going to be the toughest one, because obviously Gezi, to me, gets fresh, if that makes sense, quicker obviously after a game. He's usually always up for it, so I just knew I had to play my game against Gezi. If I'd done that, I was going to win the tournament. Yeah,
a good prediction, and probably one of your best all-round performances of the weekend against Gerwyn Price. Another ton plus average, 6 out of 12 on the doubles to get past him, and then the semi-finals, 3-1 down to Martin Schindler, 6 legs on the spin to beat him 7-3. You into a second Euro Tour final. You'd lost your previous 6 finals on the Pro Tour before then, so how determined were you to snap that run?
I was very determined, because it was like, I'm not getting beaten in another final again, because it's getting annoying. It's obviously great, it's great boost getting to the finals and stuff, but when you keep getting beaten, it just gets annoying. So I was just very determined to win this week.
Well, you did turn it around. You got past Jonny Clayton, and you said on stage after you always kept believing that you'd win on the stage, and you'd proven it now, but the next one you want to win is a major. So does this title make you believe you're closer now than you've ever been? How much confidence has it given you already?
Oh, 100%. I'm very confident now when it comes to majors. Obviously, as you touched on before, the TV wasn't really great last year, beating first round them all bar the Grand Slam, but now because I've won my first title on the stage, I can push on from that.
We'll finish up with a couple looking ahead, and still only 23, but there's not many tournaments that you haven't played in now. One event you are going to be debuting in next month is the World Cup of Darts, and when we last spoke you said it would mean the world to put on that Northern Ireland shirt. The excitement must already be high for that trip to Frankfurt.
Oh, the excitement's been there since I knew it was guaranteed into the team months ago, so I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, I didn't know who my partner was going to be. The 1 minute was Darryl for a long time, then Brendan comes out of nowhere, wins the Pro Tour, and now it's Brendan.
Yeah, we had Brendan on the show last week, and he was kind of playing it all down this past weekend. It was that last event before the cut-off, but he managed to stay above Darryl. So how do you fancy your chances next month with Brendan?
Oh, I was confident whoever was going to be playing with, because I knew it was captain in the team, first time being in the team, and obviously playing for Northern Ireland. That's always a dream come true, playing for your country. Not a lot of people can actually say they play for their country, so I'm really looking forward to it and confident for it.
And it's a very different format, isn't it, from what you guys usually play week in, week out, all pairs, the format changing last year. How do you feel about playing the pairs format?
Yeah, well, I had an interview obviously with Sky, and they asked the same question, but they didn't know, obviously, well before I turned professional, I always played with my family, my dad, my uncle and all we ever done was play pairs. So I'm used to playing pairs a lot, so I'm looking forward to playing pairs. Well,
Josh, congratulations again on the title at the weekend, and appreciate the time as always, and wish you all the best for that World Cup debut next month, the new arrival coming soon as well, and what else is to come in 2024.
Yep, thank you very much, Alex, for having me.
Thanks again to Josh for joining us now. Continuing our look back at last week in darts. It was the European Tour at the weekend. We had the Dutch Darts Championship, Josh Rock winning the title, but we're coming on to our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts, and it relates to 2 players that had big stage silverware last week. Who will be the highest seed for the 2025 PDC World Darts Championship? Are you going to go with Josh Rock, the newest Euro Tour winner, or is it going to be Luke Littler, the newly crowned Premier League champion? Who have you got?
Yeah, and I alluded to this question twice already today. Once at the beginning when I said there's more stuff to talk about Luke Littler coming up later, but also then in the next question when I mentioned there's a couple, I think, very straightforward, one correct answer questions, and this is that other one of those. I think the answer has to be Luke Littler. I mean, there's a few reasons why. The most notable is that right now there might be a little bit of a gulf between the two in the orders of merit, but when you factor in what Josh Rock is defending the rest of the year before the World Championships, and the fact that obviously Luke Littler is not defending anything, when you add in qualification money right now, Luke Littler is a fraction ahead of Josh Rock. It's really tight. There's only 5,500 pounds between them. And in fact, there's only 5,500 pounds between I was about to say a trio, but a quadruple of players, a foursome of players with Gary Anderson and Danny Noppert also in that conversation, and plenty of other players who aren't that far either right ahead or right behind them. But Luke Littler's already projected to be ahead of Josh Rock when the World Championships roll around at the end of the year. And even though I'm sure Josh Rock is going to take loads of confidence out of this title, and well, right, he should, even taking that, even if he presses on, even if he goes and wins his maiden major later this year, I still don't think it will match what Luke Littler does, even if it's the world match play, the most valuable of it, because Luke Littler is going to be live in every single major, and he's probably going to get a ranking major as well under his belt before the World Championships rolls around. He's probably going to win another Euro Tour or two. He's probably going to win another Players' Championship event or three. He's that much better and more consistent than almost everyone else on earth. So you have to think that even if Josh Rock does go and win a major, it's still not going to be enough to outperform what Luke Littler is going to do in ranking events the rest of the year. So I think the answer has to be Luke Littler. But I don't want that to detract or distract from Josh Rock's weekend. And I will in a second knock you down a peg, because you're going to Alex, and rightly so, brag about your tip of the year contender in saying that Luke Littler in saying that Josh Rock is going to be the next first-time Euro Tour winner. Very good tip, not too far out of left field, but a very good tip nonetheless. I'll talk him up for a moment, because it's something that I did think he was moving back in that direction after what was definitely a regression of a year last year. There were signs that he was getting back, but nothing that showed that he was ready to go and win a title. And yeah, his performances might have been uneven at the weekend, but they were right at the right times. He had a brilliant performance against Gerwyn Price when he needed to in the quarterfinals. He edged it out in a last leg decider, and in a good match that I think was better than the statistics showed against Cameron Menzies. They each had a couple of sloppy legs, but overall it was a very high quality affair where both of them were more playing above the ton than the mid-90s that Josh Rock had and the 98 that Cameron Menzies had in the end would dictate. And in the end, in the final, Jonny Clayton ran out of steam, and maybe so did Josh Rock. But Josh Rock never really let Clayton get back in that match after Rock took the lead in the middle portions of that match. It was a professional performance, even if it wasn't the most flashy in the final. And overall, it was a good weekend for him, not just because he won, but because he was able to win even when he wasn't playing his best. And he was able to find the right stuff, the James Wade stuff, at the correct moments, and that's why he went on and won the title. But he's not going to be a higher seed than Luke Littler. Luke Littler is probably going to be, it was almost certainly going to be a top 10 seed, and there's a very good chance he's going to be a top 5, maybe even a top 4 seed when it all is said and done, and we're heading to the Alexandra Palace in December. Josh Rock can move into the top 16. Maybe he can even move into the top 10, but he's not going to be ahead of Luke Littler. So that answers the question. But it answers only one question, because you might have a tip of the year contender, but I need to knock you down a peg. So I'm going to ask you a trivia question. How many players have won PDC senior titles so far this year?
Ooh. So we're talking Players' Championships, Euro Tours, UK Open as well?
UK Open, Masters,
Masters,
And
World Series as well. Okay, well, we've got, I think there's been 10 different winners on the Players' Championships. You've got Stephen Bunting, the Masters 11, Dimitri Van den Berg, the UK Open 12, Euro Tour, Josh Rock, Martin Schindler, Luke Humphries, I want to say maybe he might have won a Players' Championship as well. I'm going to go with 15.
Well, you're off by 2. It's not a bad guess. You forgot 2 players who you probably shouldn't have forgotten. You forgot Rob Cross and Mike Van Gerwen.
I went far off, 15 out of 17. I don't think I could have named them all.
Not bad at all, but I'll let you answer the main question now.
Yeah, so Josh Rock or Luke Littler, and the poll at the moment on Twitter is running all week, so do go and have your say if you haven't already, but a lot of people siding with you on this one, Burton. 84% going with Luke Littler, 16% going with Josh Rock, and you mentioned the ranking situation going to Ali Pali at the moment, the provisional race, $5.5 between them, so not a lot to separate them at the moment when you take out the money dropping off of Josh Rock's ranking, and obviously Luke Littler in that very enviable position of having no money to defend. But these 2 players, they are 2 of the brightest young prospects in the game. We all know how old Luke Littler is, but Josh Rock's still 23 years old. He's got a long career ahead of him, and we all remember the hype train that built around Josh during his first year on the tour in 2022, that 9-data at the Grand Slam, some of the big averages he was throwing in going into the World Championship as the 4th or 5th favourite with the bookies on debut. But when you compare Josh's career path so far to Luke Littler's, it's not been that same rapid ascent, has it? And okay, it's hard to try and compare them both, but for Josh Rock, it has been that steeper learning curve, it would seem. And this title at the weekend is first on the Euro Tour. It was the first stage title in the senior ranks in the PDC. It's taken him some time to tick off that title number 2 because he'd lost. I didn't actually realise this until I was looking earlier today, but he'd lost in his last 6 finals since winning his first title on the floor around 18 months ago. But I was watching a few of the highlights from the weekend, and you could almost see it instantly, that the magnitude of that victory on Sunday night for Josh. And I don't know if he felt like it was a weight coming off his shoulders, but you could feel the importance of what it meant to him. And I get why most people would back Luke Littler for this question. We've just seen him win the Premier League in front of 14,000 fans at the O2. He's beaten the world number 1, the world number 3 on the same night. So yeah, the sensible money would go on Littler, but don't underestimate what this Euro Tour title could do for Josh Rock, because we've seen before the platform that a Euro Tour win could do for players. Look at Joe Cullen, Jose de Souza, Mensah Suljovic, Gerwyn Price, Jonny Clayton. The list goes on. They've all won Euro Tour titles and then gone on to have major success in front of the TV cameras. So we could well be talking in 6 months' time and saying the same thing about Josh Rock, how it catapulted him to major success. And yeah, you touched on it. Before I forget, just lastly, I am particularly pleased with that result of the weekend. As I did say, I think it was around 5 or 6 weeks ago that we had a question from one of our listeners, who is going to be the next first-time Euro Tour winner? And yes, I did say Josh Rock. So tip of the year, it's in the bag, it's coming home.
Well, let's as well talk about the player who you mentioned as one of the players that a Euro Tour title really inspired onto a lot of greatness thereafter. A first stage final for Jonny Clayton since last year's World Match Play. Is this the start of a comeback from the Ferret?
Well, first of all, I must admit I didn't get a chance to watch much of the darts at the weekend, but it looks like I really missed out, judging by some of what I've seen on social media, the highlights and what people are saying as well. It looked like there was a lot of thrilling games in there. I've heard a few people talk about the Luke Woodhouse 5, Martin Schindler 6 game. I think it was the quarterfinals. Schindler averaging 106, Luke Woodhouse 100. But probably the most thrilling game was that semi-final. Jonny Clayton 7, Michael Van Gerwen 6. And yeah, I didn't get to follow the tournament closely over the weekend, but when I heard it was a Clayton Rock final, I'd say I was more surprised that Jonny Clayton was in the final. And if you go off the stats from our friends at Darts Oracle, the averages from the start of the season leading into this weekend, so you're talking 4 or 5 months worth of matches there. Jonny Clayton 48th in the averages, 92.10. Who's above him? 47th, Peter Wright, 92.23. 45th, Dirk van Dijvenbode, 92.56. And these are two players who have been really struggling for form this year. So Jonny Clayton, he was below both of those two players, and he was only bumped back into the seeds for this Euro Tour event after a few players dropped out late on. So he was set to play in that first round at the weekend. But you look at his form coming into it. He'd played 44 games going from that curtain raiser of the season, the Masters, up to that point. He'd won 26, lost 18. So around a 60% win rate. But I think the worrying thing for me was 11 of those 44 games, so exactly a quarter of them, he'd dipped below a 90 average, and he'd had more sub-90 averages than 96 plus averages, which for a player, you go back 2 years ago, he was finishing top of the Premier League table, averaging 97 for the season. It's not something you would expect, but I think for the Ferret, he looked like he was a man with a point to prove at the weekend. He'd got back into the seeds at the last moment, and we did see some signs of the Ferret of old, particularly on that Sunday night, the 6 out of 10 on the doubles, 99 average against Ryan Searle in the quarterfinals. And then how he dug in against MVG, the home crowd favourite in the Netherlands, 4-0 down. MVG just hit a 170 finish, comes back twice actually. He was 6-4 down as well in that game. And it was a game that it looked like it had everything, or a bit of everything. The clutch finishing from Clayton, I think there was a 110 in there with Van Gerwen sat on tops. And unfortunately for Jonny Clayton, saved his worst game of the weekend for last in that final. His average nearly dropping below that 90 mark again. But I think there's plenty of positives for him to take from the weekend, because the players that he's beaten on the way to the final, Van Gerwen, Chisnall, Searle, are three of them. And for me, it's probably too early to say if this is going to be the start of a comeback. I need to see more. But if you are a Welsh darts fan, you've just seen Jonny Clayton make a final. That bodes well, doesn't it, for the World Cup in a few weeks' time, when him and Gerwin Price, they are going to be the defending champions, looking to win it for a third time. And yeah, we know the World Cup is an event that they both enjoy playing in. It does bring the best out of them. And for Jonny Clayton, someone that's had such a long time between big stage finals, this run couldn't have come at a much better time for that tournament.
It certainly could not have. I don't yet know whether we can say this is the beginning of a comeback for the Ferret. It's certainly, at the very least, the beginning of arresting the slide. Because, we went back to the start of the year, rightfully so. We're worried about where his game was at. And we've been worried ever since his father passed away last summer after the World Match Play, because he's not been the same player. But there's been some signs over the last, let's say, month or so that Jonny Clayton's getting back in the right direction, even before this past weekend. If you go back to the last full week of Players' Championship events, 4 of his 6 matches were above his seasonal average, which so far in Players' Championship events is 50th at 92.19. 4 of the 6 that week were above that 92.19, and the 2 that weren't were both within a point of it. So he's lifted his game, granted over a small sample of 6 matches, but he's lifted his game and he's playing at a much better level than the mid-tour performance that we had seen from him up until that point. This past weekend, 4 of his 5 matches have been at above that level. But the question is now, can he keep going like this? Can he keep playing at more of the level that will get him in the position to win titles? And that's the question that needs answering. He's not had to play a top 32 player all year in a Players' Championship event, or hasn't beaten one all year in a Players' Championship event. And while he's beaten 7 on the European Tour so far this year, 6 in the European Tour and 1 at the UK Open so far this year, he's going to need to be winning more matches against top players if he's going to be lifting titles. And he's a player that at his peak was lifting titles, 4 televised titles in 1 year alone in his banner year of 2021. And Jonny Clayton hasn't shown that he's at that level quite yet. But it is a move in the right direction. It's a major, major move in the right direction for him. And you mentioned that match against Michael Van Gerwen, and I want to talk about it because it's a match that I don't think he would have won if this were a couple months ago, because there was nothing in his form that would make you think that from 6-4 down against MVG, he'd rattle off 3 consecutive legs. There's nothing in his form that would make you think that even after holding, he would start a leg that he needed to break with 5 perfect darts and end up breaking it in 13 darts. Granted, he was assisted by the worst visit I've ever seen from MVG, and that's not hyperbole, when MVG needed 66 and his first dart hit a single 5. He was aiming for the bull but missed. But then when he still needed, but he still had a chance to leave a finish and just had another very loose start, and then just threw the last dart away in frustration to only score 14. So he had 80 to leave 60 to leave 66. So his first start was a single 5 aiming for the 20, then went for the bull and missed that by about an inch. So it was just an awful leg from him. But Jonny Clayton came back and nailed the double. And then in the decider, Jonny Clayton took out 68 with his opponent on 60, the second biggest 68 and 2 on double 4 you'll ever see in a last leg decider with your opponent waiting on 60. I can ask you another trivia question if you want, Alex. What's the biggest ever of that situation? But it's not the type of match that Jonny Clayton would have won even a couple months ago. And the fact that he won it shows that his game is moving back to where it was, but still has a long way to go.
Well, I was going to say that Michael Van Gerwen visit trying to clean up the 80 sounds like me on Friday night just with every 3 darts, but you're going to have to put me out of my misery now. What is the best 68 finish with your opponent sat on 60?
In a last leg decider, that is. And that was, of course, Kyle Anderson against Corey Cadby to win the Auckland Darts Masters in 2017.
Very nice. What a moment that was. Well, speaking of the World Series, we have got the World Series coming back. This weekend is the US Darts Masters. We're going to be chatting about that in a moment. But before we do, let's bring in our final guest on this week's show. He is a player making his debut in the World Series this weekend. Here's our chat with Adam Sevada. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutants in the US Darts Masters this weekend, Adam Sevada. Thanks for the time, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. And we're talking at the start of a week which will see you make your big stage debut at the US Darts Masters in Madison Square Garden. How are you feeling as we edge closer to the weekend? Nervous, excited, a mix of both?
Yeah, I think more excited than anything. I was actually at a local blind draw last night, and people were asking me, and I get nervous before every event. A lot of people don't know that. Excited to see how it goes. Just to be there is just know I'll be playing the Madison Square Garden is exciting in itself,
Definitely, and we've got to ask, how did you get on in the blind draw last night?
I ended up winning it, me and my partner, so it went well.
Happy days. Well, it's been around a week and a half since you won your spot in the field via those CDC qualifiers. What have these last 10 or so days been like getting ready to play in what is going to be one of the biggest tournaments of your career so far?
It's like you said, it's been about a week and a half, so it's come quick as far as preparing, as far as travel, work, but other than that, it's just it's been the same as any other tournament. It's just it's coming within a week after Indianapolis, so everything's kind of rush, taking time off work and getting the life situated before I head out.
Well, we'll come back to this weekend a bit later on, but as this is the first time we've had you on the show, let's rewind back to the very start for you in darts, growing up in Arizona. How old were you when you first discovered darts, and how did you get introduced to it?
So I was 17, and my mom and my stepdad played in the local league, and I had to go over there to the league one night to grab, I think, the keys to get in the house. And then, they were playing, so I kind of, said, you guys aren't that good. So she said, well, play this person. So I played this person, and I ended up losing. And the next day I went to a local hardware store. I grabbed a dartboard. I don't remember the whole staple boards, whatever they were. And then my first set of darts was the Great White. I think, can't remember, Bottleford maybe, made them. Didn't know anything about darts, didn't know how to set up the board. Propped up the board on the couch and just started throwing at the board. I ended up playing league that same year, and at 17 years old, apparently the guy I played was the best player in the league, but I beat him. Then he asked how old I was. I said I was 17. I didn't know I was supposed to say 18. So they ended up changing the rules that you had to be 21 to play darts. So I didn't play league for about 4 years, but then I started playing local ADO tournaments, in our area in Arizona. And then it just kind of went from there. And then once I became 21, I was able to join the league again. And after that, I mean, I come from a small town in Arizona. It's called Parker. There's really no darts here. I would have to travel to Lake Havasu City, which is about 30 minutes away, where the original London Bridge is at. And I started playing league there, and then after a while, it just, the competition level, I guess, mine started progressing, and it really wasn't fun anymore for me. So since probably I haven't played league in maybe about 10 years, I just practice at home and I'll go to a tournament. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
Like you, my co-host Burton, he's also from America, so you two will be able to give us more of an idea here in the UK on just the size of America. How difficult is that travelling side of playing darts in America, especially when you really want to commit to more events?
Yeah, so, a lot of people talk about that around here. The travel is, it's a little difficult. I mean, a lot of the tournaments more on the East Coast, like the bigger tournaments. I mean, we do have Las Vegas Open, which is, somewhat local to me. But it is, the CDC events, they're, mainly on the East Coast. And travel does get expensive. And I don't know why. I mean, I've heard certain things, there's more interest on the East Coast than there is the West Coast. They get more, a bigger turnout. I really don't know what it is, but it is difficult as far as traveling goes. Like I said, expenses and things like that.
Well, we'll come on to more recent times with the CDC in a moment, but before then you mentioned you played a few ADO events, you played league darts. What have been some of your personal highlights playing darts over the years?
I think maybe I know my first one. I was like 21 years old. It was just being a local guy. He just recently passed of cancer. Frank Hernandez was a really big darts player. I beat him, and I was excited. And then so from there, I kind of realized I can actually beat people. But just placing, semifinals, Las Vegas Open, getting to the national finals, cricket, 01. If I really had to think, I don't think there's really, as far as ADO goes, anything that was that stands out. For me, it's been more on the what I'm doing now, like the CDC level. I just kind of go to local ADO tournaments, and for me, it's like, you win prize money, but it's really, it doesn't really do much for you, I guess you could say. It's more on the CDC level these days.
Well, let's get on to the CDC then, and fast forward to 2021. You won your first title on the CDC tour out in Philadelphia. That helped you get to the Continental Cup as well. You knocked out Canada's #1 seed, John Norman Jr. You took Jeff Smith all the way to a last leg in the quarterfinals. What did those achievements mean to you at the time?
I was excited because back then they did the qualifier on site at CDC, which they I was able to qualify and make it to the first event, and I'm sure everybody's had those days where your darts, you can't miss. I think my semifinal I had a 1-1 average, and everything was just landing, where I wanted it. It was just a great day, and just winning that, knowing the people that are in the room. You got a lot of the best dart players in North America that are there through that field, and win a CDC event. So I was excited, and then the Continental Cup came, and I was just excited to be there again. And a lot of people, I want to say, more of the staff and the commentators, weren't aware of who I was, but a lot of dart players were. So Playing John Norman, you know, I've seen him play. PDC stadium, things like that. For me, I just go into every dart match. I'm just there to play darts. You know, whatever happens, happens. Obviously, everybody wants to win. And then, luckily, I was able to pull it off and play Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith's had my number for about the past 2 years. I think I ran into him 2 or 3 times last week. But, yeah, me and Jeff Smith have had some pretty good games. He's a great shot, but, you know, one day I'll get past him. But, yeah, I was definitely excited. And, you know, hopefully, you know, I'm able to go back again.
Definitely, and I know you've said before your work commitments in the past, that's stopped you from pursuing more tournaments. It's through your work you also got your darts nickname, The Reaper. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I work at a local funeral home in my town. I've been here for about 8 years. And so I was talking to a friend who lives in Lake Havasu City, and she works with the CDC, and she's like, we need a nickname for you now. So she kind of came up with it, you know, obviously Reaper, funeral, you know, kind of goes together. So that's where that kind of came from.
Well, let's get on to this year then. And last month you were playing in the CDC's virtual Q School, where you won a tour card to play on the main CDC tour this year. What persuaded you to try and get back on the tour this year?
You know, just being out of it for the year. I think it was 2022, 23. I don't remember. You know, just wanting to be there and win again, and knowing I could do it. But like we were just saying about, you know, kind of work, you know, life gets in the way. You know, I mean, I wish I was retired and could play darts full time. But that's not the case. And so, you know, I seen, you know, people winning. I was like, you know, I could beat them. You know, I could easily do that. So my daughter, she recently moved away. Daughter, since she was a baby, she's kind of made her, so she moved away. She started her own life. So for me, I feel like, you know, I don't have any more responsibilities or obligations. So now I can, you know, come and go as it please, be able to travel more, do things. So, you know, that's why I decided to try out to get the tour card again. And, yeah, you'll be seeing a lot more of me on travel.
Glad to hear it. So that first weekend of the CDC season a few weeks ago in Indianapolis, what was it like being in that room with all the top talent from North America, and you were there competing with them again?
Yeah, so knowing, you know, seeing the brackets, and everybody who has their card, you know, there's a lot of it's a pretty stacked field this year, you know, compared to other years that I've seen. I think it's a pretty, you know, everybody's a strong player. And it was, you know, I didn't feel any way myself, you know, as I did before. It's just, you can't really go into a tournament thinking, you know, wow, you know, this person's hurt, that's right, I got to play that person. Because, you know, mentally you kind of already defeated yourself. But, you know, just knowing the talent that's there is, it's really good. So you definitely have to be on top of your game, and if not, you know, you could travel across the states and one and done, and you go home. So, yeah.
Well, that certainly wasn't the case last time out, because we also had those 2 qualifiers for the US Darts Masters. You got to the last 16 in the first one. The next day you make it all the way to the final, lose out another close game with Jeff Smith, but it's enough to earn that spot as the highest finisher on the order of merit across those 2 qualifiers. Going into that final with Jeff, did you know what you needed to do? Obviously win the game you're in, but were there any permutations as far as how many legs you needed to win to guarantee that spot on the order of merit?
No, I had no clue going into it. My roommate for the weekend, Anthony Romero, who's in California, I told him, you know, I you know, it's top 16. My thing is, I need everybody who plays top 8 and above to not make it, you know, the next day, and I need to make it to the final, or I just need to flat out win it. So that was just kind of my mindset. If I get into the final, I don't know, maybe I'll be okay, but I didn't want to, you know, forward think like that. I just knew I needed to win it. So yeah, going into that last match with Jeff, and then taking it to a last leg decider, and then I can't remember what I started off with, like a 41 or 45, or like a 36, and I was like, yeah, this ain't going well. So, after the match was done, they announced it, and from my understanding, I think I got it by like one leg, if I'm not mistaken, over, I don't know if it was Gates or fell apart, but luckily I had one more leg win than they did, so it was a good end.
Well, if that was the case, that 1-4-8 to make it 4-all with Jeff sat on tops, that could have been probably one of the biggest shots you've ever had. Yeah,
that was a huge shot. Going up for that, I knew on I had to take this out. The first dart landed, and it was a good lie, second dart. And the third dart, I got a little nervous, and so I needed to hurry and get it out of my hand, so I threw it, and yeah, it was a huge shot. It was a huge shot. Definitely needed that. Because I know when Jeff gets up, he doesn't miss. I mean, he's a very good finisher. And I know if I give him that chance, it was probably done.
Yeah, it's a great shot, and that result saw you finish ahead of John Part and Leonard Gates on leg difference. And I saw your interview with the CDC after, and you said that it had been a rough day. You'd had some bad news at the start of the day, but you fought through it to qualify for the US Darts Masters. So what were the emotions like after it got announced that you had qualified?
Yeah, so the emotions were still they were there. Obviously a little more because I won my spot to Madison Square Garden, and then receiving the bad news. Thankfully, that bad news has now reversed itself, and things are going better for a childhood friend of mine. And so yeah, it was like mixed emotions. All the way through. I was happy, sad, but like I said in the interview, I was able to pull through it, and just focus on my game, and thankfully I made it.
Definitely, and it's an exciting weekend ahead, getting to play at Madison Square Garden. You're going to be up against one of the top PDC stars in the first round. You mentioned in that chat as well that you told a friend back home you wanted to play Luke Littler. We've just seen him win the Premier League. Do you still fancy a crack at him?
Absolutely. She's a huge fan of Luke, and I always give her a hard time. And Luke, he's spectacular. He's an amazing shot, but just being there, I mean, who wouldn't want to play him? But on the other hand, who wouldn't want to play anybody that's up there? That's basically everybody from the Premier League. So anybody I play, I might give it a shot and enjoy every moment of it. But yeah, I just had mentioned that because, like I said, she's a huge fan of Luke.
And away from playing, are you a big follower of darts? Are you someone who's going to follow the top players, the tournaments like the Premier League, the Worlds, the match play, and so on?
Yeah, no, definitely. I watch, the big tournaments, that I can. A lot of them, like the Worlds, match play, and the championships. They happen during work. So as I'm working, I have my phone on every now and again. But yeah, I definitely follow. Yeah.
And for you, we've seen the levels that you can produce. Obviously, with Dart Connect nowadays, we see a lot more games than we did before, but you can average in the high 90s, the hundreds in matches. Do you have any long-term ambitions when it comes to darts? Obviously, this weekend it is ticking off a big item on that bucket list, but have you dreamt about maybe playing at Ali Pali or going on the tour, playing these top players week in, week out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, in my interview, everybody's, dream is to play at the Ali Pali. I mean, for me, what else are you playing for? I mean, but as far as wanting to go to Q school, I do want to. I've talked about it in the past. I know it's a huge commitment, but I mean, if that were to happen, let's just say I did get a car, I figured that out, when that time came. But yeah, no, I do have plans of wanting to go to Q school. I was kind of talking about it last night to a friend that possibly this coming, I wouldn't seem like in January or so. So yeah, I may go out there to see how it goes. I know I could keep up, as far as how my scoring goes. If I could score like that, all the time, I definitely have a chance against anybody. We'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I would definitely love to play at the World Championship in the Ali Peli and, kind of make a career out of it, I guess you could say, if I were to get my card and go from there.
Well, hopefully that will happen one day. And lastly, and most importantly of all, as this will be the first time we've seen you on the big stage in a PDC event, we've got to ask, have you decided on what your walk-on song's going to be?
Yeah, no, it'll be the same as AC/DC, House Bells. I've just been a big, AC/DC fan, Def Leppard, things like that. The old school rock. So, yeah, that's what it'll be.
Well, we look forward to hearing that this weekend. Adam, it's been a pleasure to get you on the show. Thanks for giving us some of your time, and wish you all the best for this weekend and what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. You guys take care.
Thanks again to Adam for joining us. Now the World Series resumes later this week with the US Darts Masters, and it's going to be a World Series debut, not just for our guest Adam Sevada, but also for you, Burton. How much are you looking forward to being able to enjoy the darts in person at Madison Square Garden this weekend?
Yeah, it's the only thing I haven't been to yet. I've been to a major event. I've been to a Euro Tour. I've been to a Players Championship. I haven't been to Q School, all right, but I've been to Euro Tour qualifiers. I've been to the PDPA qualifier. I've never been to a World Series event. I can finally check that off, and I'm excited because I haven't actually been to a professional darts tournament since before COVID. Because I've been to Europe once since then, but I didn't have it. I had too much other things I was seeing and doing, and I didn't have a chance to get to a tournament. So it's been 5 years. The last time I was at a tournament, Nathan Aspinall won the UK Open. That's how long it's been. I'm really looking forward to it. I think there's going to be some really good darts. I'm not going to go into the U.S. and Canadian players now because I know we have another question where we're going through that. But I think the field has never been deeper. I think you can pick out multiple of those players who not just could win the odd match 6 legs to 5 and advance to the second round, but players that, if they bring their game, can beat almost anyone in the field. It's going to obviously be very difficult for one of them to win the title with both Luke Littler and Luke Humphries there. But if they bring their game, they can beat anyone on their day. And I don't think there's ever been a time where I could say, half of those players, if not more, are of that caliber. And this year they are. So I'm excited to see it. And I'm hopefully excited to see our first ever American or Canadian lifting the trophy come Saturday night.
Yeah, it's very possible that could happen. And I've got to say, I'm very jealous of you, Burton, getting to go this weekend. When I met up with Stowe Bunce and Peter Satira from the CDC at the Grand Slam last year, we were chatting in the Players Hotel about getting to MSG for the World Series this year. It's a little bit further for me to travel, probably a once-in-a-lifetime trip. So I'm going to aim for 2025 to get there if it is there again next year. And it is the third year that we've had the US Darts Masters at Madison Square Garden. Last year seemed to have grown from that first year. The venue was fuller, and when we spoke with Peter on the show a few weeks ago, it sounded like the ticket sales are even better this year. And I'm sure some of those ticket sales, they're off the back of finding out Luke Littler was going to be making the trip over. But I reckon some of them were bought after they heard that you were going to be there as well, Burton. So yeah, have a great time. And as always say, you can hear it early this week, but make sure you enjoy the darts when you get there.
And hopefully someone recognizes me from my voice. It would be part of the new weekly Dartscast tradition. But the draw is not quite yet out for the U.S. Darts Masters. But of the 8 American and Canadian players who will be representing North America, who do you make as the favorite for the North American Darts Championship on Saturday afternoon U.S. time?
Oh, yeah, that is a tough one. And looking at the CDC social media, they said that some pundits are calling this the best field in the history of the event. And all 8 players from the CDC ranks, they've won a CDC title in the past. 6 of them have played in the US Darts Masters before. So the 2 debutants in the field this year, you've got a player I just mentioned, Stowe Bunce. Hard to believe it is going to be his debut after all the times we've seen him on the big stage over the last 6 months. And then you've got as we mentioned earlier, one of our guests this week, Adam Sevada, probably the unknown package of the group, but he's been playing darts for a long time, and you heard from him earlier, now in a position where he can push himself more into what the CDC and North American darts has to offer. But as for who's the favourite for that North American Championship, yes, it's a difficult one because you've got 3 tour card holders, Matt Campbell, Jules Van Dongen, Danny Lauby. You've got last year's winner, Jeff Smith. He won through the qualifiers to get there this year. And don't forget, he made the final of the US Darts Masters as well last year. So he's got a lot of fond memories of that stage at Madison Square Garden. So that's 6 of the 8 that I've mentioned. I might as well go through the other 2 as well. You've got Alex Spellman, the cross-border challenge champion recently. David Cameron got to the final of that event. Also won an event on the CDC tour just a few weeks ago. But as for who's the favourite, I'm going to go with Jeff Smith. He is the defending champion. He's had to win his way back into the field through those qualifiers. He's not got that tour card at the moment, but I think he's going to be matched up. He's played those qualifiers. He's played on the CDC tour a few weeks ago, and without that travelling, coming over to the UK, going to Europe to play on the PDC tour more often, I think he's going to come into it fresher this year. So yeah, he's won it twice before. He's made another final as well. I think the silencer is the man to beat on Saturday.
I think that's a very, very reasonable projection, because I've said it a few times on this show over the last couple of years now that, you know, there's quite a few players that you can say COVID derailed them, but I think Jeff Smith is one of the ones near the top of that list that doesn't get talked about as much, because he wasn't, prior to COVID, he wasn't one of the top 32 players. So people have talked about, you know, Jermaine Wadamina and a few other players who were near the top of the game and slid after COVID hit. And some, like Wadamina, are now on the way up. Some never went back on the way up. You know, we can also mention Glenn Durant. But Jeff Smith was in that second tier, top 64, but not top 32, and not yet pushing on to qualify for majors. But Jeff Smith, with the added difficulty of traveling and the added stress of getting across an ocean during lockdown, his performances dropped off, and it dropped off at the wrong time, because I think when 2020 and 2021 came around, he was just then getting ready to really make his name known in the PDC. He was really playing at a level that I thought was getting ready to push on and maybe qualify for some of the televised events. And it didn't happen because it was just too difficult. And now he decided to step away from PDC, at least for the time being. But I think he's obviously the most experienced of the players. And he's also on his day probably the best. But that doesn't mean he's the only one that has a chance to go deep in this field. I think Danny Lauby is moving in the direction of becoming the best player in North America if he's not there yet, as is Alex Spellman. The difference between the two being that Lauby has a tour card and Spellman doesn't. And therefore Lauby's getting some of that experience and starting to play fairly well. He's 100th in averages so far this year in Players' Championship events. And he hasn't been as flashy as I thought we might see from him yet. He's not top 95 in a single match in the Players' Championship events, even though he did it quite a few times at Q School. But I think it's coming, and we're seeing him frequently get into those low 90s now, and he's moving in the right direction. It's been a regression, though, so far this year for the other two tour card holders, Jules Van Dongen and Matt Campbell. And Van Dongen, after literally playing at top 10 in the world standard for a few months last year, is now near the bottom 10 of all tour card holders. He's really, really struggling so far this year. Matt Campbell also has regressed significantly, although it's still early days in the season. So it's a question of where their games are. And the other players we haven't seen as much from, at least internationally, but obviously Cameron and Sevada won through qualifiers with tough fields that involved a lot of accomplished players, Leonard Gates, John Part, the most known names, but also the top players in North America that were playing in those events, and obviously Stowe Bunce with the quarterfinal last year. But I think I'm going to have to – I'll disagree with you. You went Jeff Smith. I'll go Alex Spellman. I'm going to go Alex Spellman to win it, because I think Alex Spellman is moving in the direction, and he has the most potential along with Danny Lauby of these. I'm going to go for an American winner this year, Alex Spellman. And I'll say he beats your player 8-7, taking out 68 with Jeff Smith waiting on 60. Anything else for this week?
Well, I've got to say a few thank yous. Thank you to our guests for joining us, to Josh and Adam for their time. Thank you to our sponsors, the Darts Corner, Condor Darts and Quiff, for their continued support. Remember, for all your darting needs, Darts Corner and Condor Darts, they are the places to go. Links in the description, so do go and check them out. And if you fancy a flutter on the darts at the weekend, Quiff is the place to go. There's chances to supercharge your odds, so check them out either on the Quiff website or download the app again. Links in the description for that. And if you're having a bet, remember 18 plus, T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly and be gambleaware.org. And lastly, as always, thank you to everyone for listening. We're going to be back next week. Looking forward to hearing about your trip to New York, Burton, and see if you can beat my record of being asked for one picture and being recognised by my voice these last 2 weeks. I'm sure you're going to beat that. But until then, only one thing to do, and that is to enjoy the darts.
Well, I was already asked for my picture at the UK Open. But I was not recognized by my voice. In fact, someone had to keep asking people if they knew where I was in order to find me. So I was not recognized by either my voice or by my looks, which is, I guess, 0 for 2 that way. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Should be hopefully some fantastic darts that I will enjoy, and I will hang tight until then because it's only a few days away. So we'll see you guys on the other side when I'm back from New York.